Everything is communicating with us all the time. And it's our job to open up, to be able to receive the codes and the communication that's embedded in all of the interactions, the earth, the elements, the animals, the plants. They are all talking to us all the time. And it's a matter of whether we have the listening, a deep enough listening and openness to be able to receive what they are sharing. And what they're sharing is the key and the code to this universe, to this entire reality. Everything that we need to know is being shared all the time. If we only have the willingness and openness to receive it and listen. I'm Waxéla Sananda. Thank you for joining me today. So today I have this alligator story that is a really big part of my life here in Florida. It continues. It's the alligator saga that I've been experiencing since I moved here. And it's just deepened and become more profound. And now I'm living on a small lake that has alligators. And so they appear in front of my home in my lanai, not in my lanai, but in front of my lanai regularly. And they are communicating with me. And it's so much fun. And there's so much depth that they have to share. And so today I'm going to share with you the story of the alligators. I'd like to begin with a little bit of story from when I traveled with the shaman. And if you've read my book or watched my videos, you might have heard me talk about the shaman that came and found me in my early 20s. And I traveled with him for 3 years. And I really learned shamanism and galactic shamanism during that time. While I will say I learned it, it was really I remembered it, because this is in all of us, these knowings, these encodements, they are within us, and they awaken within us when someone shares the right expressions, frequencies, stories, downloads, so that we are able to receive them and awaken to those codes and knowings and rememberings and understandings that are already in us, but we are oftentimes not awake to yet. And so this is very much how it was when I was with the shaman. I didn't learn from him. He didn't teach in a way that is what we think of Western style teaching. It wasn't like he sat me down and said, okay, here's how it works. And in order to open a portal, you do this, A, B, C, D, or in order to communicate with the animals or the plants or the elements, you do this. It was a showing, a demonstrating, and a storytelling. And the storytelling would show me the possibility. It would open my mind to the possibility of what I can do and what's within me. If it's within him and he's sharing the story, then it's also within me. And then it opened my mind to the possibility. And then there would be the practice. We would practice it. And so I remember specifically a time we had first arrived in Kauai, and he'd gone outside and come back in, and he said something to the effect of, I was just talking to a praying mantis and it told me, and then he said something profound. And I thought, well, I want to talk to a praying mantis. And how did you do that? And he didn't tell me how he did it. He just told me that he did it. And he said, it's probably still out there. Go talk to it. And so I did. I went out and I thought, well, okay, first of all, I'm not sure that I was even able to find the praying mantis, but he said it didn't matter, just talk to whatever shows up. And I remembered. I remembered as a child, I would go to what I affectionately called the swamp. It was actually a marshy area near my home. I called it the swamp. To me, it was the swamp. And the frogs would communicate with me. The fairies would communicate with me. All of the little miniature beings and insects and amphibious creatures and all of the things that were there would speak to me, but not in words, in frequency, in knowing. They would communicate with me, but not in the way that humans communicate with each other. They each have their own way and style of communicating. And at that time in my life as a child, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm talking to the frogs. I was just being with the experience that I was having. And so it's a remembering of, oh, yeah, when we're children, we don't need to know A, B, C, D. This is how it's done. What we want to know as children, or what we do naturally as children, is we have experiences. We go out in the world, we experience the world, we interact with it, we learn and we open to it, and we have the experience of gnosis, of opening up to awarenesses. And we learn in this very experiential way. And so shamanism is like that as well. It's going back to that childlike aspect of self and having the experience in the body. And this is the embodiment piece. It's not about going out here to get the information. It's about coming in to receive what's already present within us, because everything out here is a reflection of what is happening inside, of what is already in us. It's a remembering that which we already are. Everything speaks in its own way. And this is important to understand. If you go out into the world, and this is true with humans, with animals, with anything you're interacting with, if you expect that other self, that other being, to speak to you the way that you speak, in your language, in your frequency, in your way of wording things, you're not going to get the communication, because you have your own individual way of sharing and expressing, and so does everyone else, and so does everything else. And so all of the different types of animals I've found have different styles of communicating. I once had a cat. Now, I've had many cats. I'm a cat person, so I've had a number of cats throughout my life. And one time, I was shown that a very special cat would be coming to me, and I saw it in my meditation first. He was already communicating with me before he showed up, 3 months before he showed up, in fact. And then when he showed up in a way that it was unmistakable that it was him. The cat had told me its name. Its name was Osiris. Now, whether or not we actually called him Osiris, I wasn't attached to, but I knew that was his name. My daughter was young at the time, and she wanted to name the cat, of course. So she wrote out she had this sheet of names, and I think there were 20 some names on the list. And it was like Muffy and Puffy and Mitten and things like that. Things that a little girl would name an animal. And so I said, could I just add one name to the bottom of the list? You get to choose. And she said, okay. And so I just added Osiris to the bottom of the list. And she looked at the name. She said, what is that? And I said, Osiris. And she said, okay. She didn't really like the sound of that. And she went off. And the next day she said, Mom, the cat's name is Osiris. And I said, okay. And she wasn't entirely happy about it, but she had received the communication. So Osiris came into our lives, and Osiris communicated very clearly in pictures. And it took me a minute to realize and understand how he communicated. I had a beautiful monarch butterfly flying across my window just now, but Osiris communicated in images. And so when I wanted Osiris to do something or behave in a certain way or not behave in a certain way, if I would make a very clear image in my mind and make contact with him, whether it's eye contact, if I would just touch him and show him, it very clearly show him, hey, this is what I want you to do or not do. He would respond, he would get it, and he would receive that. And he was very good at responding in exactly the way that I requested. And he liked to wander off. He was indoor, outdoor. So sometimes he wouldn't come back. And I remember one time there was about a 2-day period where he was missing, and that was very unusual. And we were concerned about him. And so my son, who was very young at the time, maybe 4, he and I went outside and we decided to call Osiris with our minds, because cats don't come when you call them unless, well, it just depends on the cat, I suppose. But Osiris wasn't the kind of cat that would respond to calling him. He would respond to a telepathic signal. And so Gabriel, my son, and I went outside. I had a little bench out in front of the house, and we sat there and we signaled Osiris with our mind to come home. We called him home with mental images and telepathic frequency communication. And my son got this. Like, he was so good at this. He still is. We sat there for about 15 minutes, maybe less, maybe 10, and here comes Osiris. He came back just running toward us. Hi, I'm back. And it was so great. And then every time he wandered off and didn't come home for a period, we would signal him to come back. He was the most psychic cat that I'd ever had, and he communicated purely in frequency and imagery. And when I learned that, I was able to communicate anything to him. And that was an easy communication once I understood this is how he communicates, how he speaks. And so fast forward to when I moved to Florida 7 years ago, my son was in elementary school and young. My daughter was already off to college, but I was concerned about alligators. And sometimes in Florida, we have alligators wandering around neighborhoods, wandering from pond to pond and stream to lake to, just doing what they do. And that's natural. But it was a concern having a young child. And I went to a Dr. Joe meditation. I've told this story many times. And I was in a deep, deep, deep state of meditation. And I was confronted by an alligator in that meditation. And I knew that the alligator was there to consume me, it wanted to eat me. And the instruction Dr. Joe had given before that meditation was lean into whatever shows up. Whatever shows up is there for you. So lean into it. See what happens. It's either that or come out of it. And I knew it was either, okay, I'm either going to let this alligator eat me, or I'm going to come out of the meditation, which I don't want to do. And so I did. I went for it. I said, okay, if you're going to do it, here I am. Let's go. And sure enough, the alligator ate me, and I was digested and excreted into the bottom of the pond. And then something amazing happened. I still had my consciousness. My consciousness came up to the top of the water, and I was growing, and I was a lotus flower. And I was a lotus flower floating on the water, petals opening up to receive the sun. And I got to feel the blissful, rapturous experience of being a flower, opening the petals to receive the sun, being supported by the cool water and receiving the warm sun, having everything that I needed, feeling nourished, activated, opening and opening and opening like 1,000-petaled lotus. And I received enlightenment. It was bliss. It was rapture. It was everything. It was amazing. And I evolved from that experience. And so that was kind of my introduction to, how am I going to deal with alligator energy? Well, certainly not to allow it to put me in fear, because transformation and enlightenment is possible instead. So this has been kind of my alligator path. And I've been in Florida many years now, 7 years. I haven't had a lot of close encounters with alligators until I moved to this new house that I'm in, where I moved April 1st. So I've only been here a couple of months. and there are alligators in the pond, and they make themselves known. And what I found is, first of all, I'm fascinated whenever I see one. I get really excited. When they make themselves known, it's a blessing. And I looked up the meaning of alligator, and it is initiation. And alligators bring you into a deeper presence and initiation on your path. And what a blessing that is. Recently, it was mating season. And one day I had been out and I came in the house and I could hear this deep, guttural, rumbling sound. And even though I had never heard an alligator mating call before, I knew that was an alligator mating call. There was no mistaking it. And so I went outside on my lanai and I stood there. I have a screened in lanai, so it was dark. I wasn't just standing out at the edge of the water with no protection. I just want you to know I'm still careful about things. But I stood out on my lanai and I felt that alligator call, and it felt so close. It felt like it was right there, but it was reverberating through my body, the loudness and the frequency, the sound of it. I also play gong. And if you've ever been at a sound bath or played gong, when you play it or when you're lying in front of it or sitting in front of it, you feel it through your body. The sound reverberates and you feel it in your cells. You feel it in your energy. You feel it in all parts, multidimensionally. And that was what I felt from this alligator sounding in the pond. And it was so clear. He was signaling for his mate. He wanted a mate. It's mating season. He's ready. And so he was calling a mate in. And I just was so entranced by the clear communication that was coming from this alligator. It was unmistakable. And if I had been a female alligator, I would have gone right out there and joined him, because it was so clear what was being called for, that I felt the universe responding in his frequency, sound, communication. There was no mistake to be made. He was making a clear frequency communication to the earth, to the elements, to the other alligators, and to anything that could hear it. The universe was receiving that call and undoubtedly responding. And so in the interim, I've heard various alligator calls that really made such an impact on me about the clarity of communication. But then the other night, I had an experience that was so magical. And this has been happening for me lately now. I will feel in my body when alligators are present near my property. And so even if I don't hear their physical call, and I'm in the house, it's really hot now, so usually the doors are closed because I don't want to air condition the outside, but nevertheless, I can hear it in my body when alligators are present. And inevitably, it's a sensation more than even a hearing, but it's in their language. And I will go out and I'll go outside, and inevitably, every time that happens, every time I feel this particular feeling, a frequency in my body, I know that they're there. And so I'll go out, and yes, an alligator will be there. And so this happened a few days ago. I was coming home from wherever I'd been, and I was in my kitchen, and I felt it in my body. I'm like, oh, and I didn't feel that it was just one. I felt there are two alligators. Alligators are here, and they have a communication for me. And I felt it, and I heard it, but I heard it from within me. And so I went out on my lanai. It was dusk. It wasn't dark yet. So I was able to see them. And coming from the other side of the pond, or the middle of the pond, here are two alligators coming straight toward me. And I went outside of my lanai, the caged screen lanai, because I really wanted to be present for them, because it was so clear. They were coming to communicate something to me. And they got to the point of about 10 feet from the water's edge, and they just stayed right there. They actually, when I come out, they always kind of go under the water, whereas when I'm in the lanai with the the screen, they feel like they come out. I don't know if they feel safer, but they come up to the top. But when I come out, they submerge. So it's just like their nose and their head that are visible. But so these two, they came straight toward me. And I just felt them, and I was just being present with them, and they stopped and they just looked at me, and I stopped and looked at them, and we had this frequency exchange interaction, and it was so beautiful. And I was telling this to a friend the other day, and she said, "Well, what were they telling you? What were they saying to you? What did you say to them?" And I said, "Well, I said, congratulations, you found each other. The alligator found his mate." And I was celebrating. It was just a celebration, like, "Yay, good for you. I'm so happy for you." It was very clear. And the demonstration, the communication was, when you are so clear with your frequency exchange with the universe, which is with the land that you're in, with the space that you're in, with the beings that are around you, when you're so clear with your frequency communication of what it is that you desire, that you want to attract to yourself, when your frequency communication is that clear, it's going to show up. It will manifest. It's the way it works. It is the law of this reality. It is universal law. Clear communication creates the physical manifestation. And there it is in two alligators looking right back at me, and they're sharing with me, and I'm celebrating with them. And it was like a little party. And when that exchange was complete, I walked inside my lanai, and they went off into wherever they went next. And it was beautiful. It was such a blessing. And so to complete this communication that I have for you today, to complete this sharing of code, I really want to get present to, there's nothing outside of you. And we have these experiences of being individual, it's a very unique experience, having individuality, being in a physical body, being in this reality that we call Earth, and having this human experience is very unique. But we are all consciousness, and we are all one consciousness that is manifest in all of these different bodies. And we get to play in this reality with the other beings that are here, whether they're alligators or cats or other people or the earth and elements itself, the water, the ocean, the air, all of the different things that we experience are us. It's you. It's you, and you are communicating to yourself through me right now, but through many, many, many other ways. And the code for you to receive from this today is be clear in your communication. And we don't just communicate verbally, we communicate with our mental imagery. We communicate with our emotional energy, the emotion, the frequency of what we're expressing. So our words are our sound. We communicate in sound, image, frequency, and emotion. So the words that we say carry a vibration. They carry code, and that code is being received by all other aspects of self, by the universe, by this reality, and it's being received and reflected back to us. So how are you speaking? What words are you using to convey your experience of life? And the sound that you use, the tonality that you use, the way that you express yourself, it's always being received and sent back to you. And along with that, the mental imagery that you use is one of those key tools to communicate. So we have the words that we say and the imagery that we send out, and our thoughts, whether we're putting words with them or not, the thoughts that we think, they're sending a communication that's being received by consciousness, just like I receive the communication of the alligators, whether I'm physically standing in front of them and I can see them or not. Now I hear that communication within my body. I don't even hear it first outside of myself. I hear them speak to me within me first. And then I know that they're communicating with me, and I come out and I see them. And this is how it works. The communication is happening within you, and your communication is happening within the heart of the universe, and it is received, and then it's brought to you physically so that you can see it and experience it. And it is an inner standing of each other, I am, we are all the one consciousness communicating to each other in these various ways. This is our playground. This earth reality, this is our playground where we get to experiment with frequency and emotion and action. And when we put action together with sound and imagery and emotion and frequency, we create what our life is. Our life is our masterpiece. And if your life is not what you desire for it to be, where can you become at responsibility or at creatorship of your life? Because you are creating your experience in every moment. So I invite you today to share with, and I'd love to hear how you're receiving this in the comments. So please do comment and let me know. How is this landing for you? What are you hearing here? What is opening up for you? What are you receiving? What's being communicated? Because this is the code for you to receive. I am you speaking to you, and you will receive this in some way. And so is everything else. And so is everyone else. The people that you love, the people that you don't love, the animals that you adore, the animals that scare you, all of the things that you're experiencing in this reality, the weather. I mean, I'm in Florida, where we get hurricanes, and we have rip current warnings right now in the water, and there are things to watch out for. Yeah, I'm not going to go swim with alligators. There are people that do. They've mastered their reality and their fear. I call it respect. I have respect for sharks and alligators, and those beings that deserve respect, because they could take my life if they wanted to. And I cherish this life. I want this life to last as long as possible on this planet and in this reality. So I will preserve and make sure that I'm not doing anything to put my physical in jeopardy. And there are people who swim with sharks. There are people who keep alligators and interact with them. And that amazes me. I'm fascinated by it. They've mastered themselves and that reality so much that they're able to interact as peers. Doesn't matter what the animal is. There's always an opportunity to go into oneness. I choose to have that oneness from a distance, at least a comfortable distance of 20 feet or so. But I really respect people that have mastered their reality to completely not need any kind of distance physically. However, I'm not inviting you to do that. What I'm inviting you to do is find the communication within yourself. Find your inner standing. And I invite you also to listen deeply. And if you're someone like I was in my early 20s, and the shaman said he had just had an interaction with praying mantis, and the praying mantis gave him some incredible wisdom, and I wanted to know how. And he said, go do it. Just go do it. Go do it. And what I learned was it's a remembering, a deepening of listening, and not expecting the other elements of life to communicate to you in the same way that you communicate. When I get the communication from alligators, it's not in English words. When I communicate with other animals, it's very rarely do I hear words being spoken. It's images, it's emotional expressions, it's thoughts being received and downloaded in gnosis, claircognizance, and the frequency communication from the alligators. I hear When I hear them within me, I hear them in their language. I hear the alligator call in that low guttural frequency sound, but I hear it from within myself, from within my heart. And then I know they're present in their language. So I invite you. Yeah, insects communicate very differently too. And I've had communications. I mean, I have a video about communicating with a cockroach and ants. I used to have ants in my 2 houses ago. And I communicated with them and asked them not to be in the house, to be around the house is okay, but not in the house, because I didn't want ants in my house. So they left when I was clear and found the way to frequency communicate with them. Didn't need to use poison or something like that. I used intention and communication and frequency, and I found the frequency that they responded to. And it wasn't anger or get out of my house. It was love. Lovingly, I respect you and your space. Will you respect that this is my space and not enter, not cross the boundaries that I've set? The boundaries are the internal perimeter of my home. And they got that, and they did exit. They stayed outside. I saw them outside all the time, but they didn't come in. And so everything, whether it's a person, an animal, an insect, the elements, the weather, you can communicate. The earth, of course, plants, you communicate in a certain way with each of the expressions of consciousness embodied. And you get to find that within yourself, how that communication takes place. That is shamanism. And the next, I suppose the next level of that, or maybe just a different side of that, is galactic shamanism. Galactic shamanism, which I also practice, is really finding those communications with what we think of as the galactics being out there in the galaxy. They're inside. The communications come from within. They seem at first to be outside of myself, but ultimately I must find the frequency match within myself, and then I receive the communication. It's all within us already. Remember who you are. I will end there today. And thank you so much for joining me. Please give this a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Do share it. It helps other people find it. Even liking, subscribing, commenting, all of that helps other people find my work. And I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging in there with me today. And I hope that you receive something magical and profound from this communication and this energy exchange today. I'm Waxéla Sananda. I love you. I cherish you. Namaste.